Christian's recipe, more or less. I had to mod a few things. So I actually brought in my gas burner. Believe it or not, since I'm at the tail end of the electrical line, my air conditioner will kick off if I use the electric burner, or sometimes even the coffee maker will do it. In fact, I'm going to turn that on. Sometimes it just kicks off during the day, anyhow, for no reason. Alright, so we have got our chicken browned. Let me see this. We have got our chicken browned. And there went my air conditioner. And the power! You gotta love it. It's harvest season, so everything's running. The what they call the bodegas, the grain elevators, are all running. All their blowers are going. And so there's not quite enough power to go around. And sometimes I get the short end of the stick. So here's my, let me see if I can get where you can see it. Here's my chicken. It's about to the point that I'm supposed to put in the garlic. So let's get ready to rock that. Hopefully we can balance this where you can halfway see. Alright, we are going to put some of the chicken juice in Logan's bowl because he'll love that. So that's going to be first. Because most of that is just water. Alright, so I have trouble getting flavor into the meat if I don't marinate it or something. So we're going to use Christian's technique. I guess to Julianne, I haven't looked this up, but he's been studying. I think that means to cut your veggies like this. So we did that with half of the ginger, and it's in with the veggies. So the rest of the ginger is minced, and I went ahead and put in some red hot chili peppers. Very hot chile de árbol. No, this is chile de monte. And there's garlic in there too. So we're going to go ahead and make all that happen. And I've got pretty good heat on my gas. So we'll see how that goes. And then he let this go for a little bit before he put in the sauce. That was kind of his mystery sauce. So I'm going to try to approximate that with what we see here, with a little bit of fish sauce. I've got some canned teriyaki sauce and a little bit of sake cooking wine. So we're going to go ahead and throw that in, but we'll give it maybe a minute to just do what it does. And maybe that garlic will cook in a little bit. These chili peppers are also strong enough that they need to kind of cook a little, or they're so hot you just can't even handle it. You think maybe a little oil, a little olive oil? Let's take a look. He said 15 minutes. I'm not quite going to have it done by then because I'm not that fast. And when I cooked Thanksgiving with Christian, I'll tell you what, he chopped those veggies so fast, it was unbelievable. So I got to say that he's got that figured out, how to make quick work in the kitchen. Alright, my garlic is sizzling in. The garlic is actually browning a little bit. So that's fantastic. Go ahead and run that one more round. And I'm also going with brown rice. I have quit white rice, potatoes for the most part. You know, the Mexicans sit around and drink sugared coffee at night and eat sweetbreads. So that's really not good for... Got me looking like Fred Flintstone a little bit. I think I'm doing a little better now. You want to see? Right there. Right there. Anyhow, I'm a little leaner than I was a month or two ago. We're getting some things done. Alright, so let's go ahead and improvise the sauce. Let's go with the teriyaki first. Can you see that? All right. There's the teriyaki. This is kind of a thin teriyaki. And I'm going to put this on maximum overdrive. That's actually a dead soldier. Dr. D does not use fish sauce, but I like the little bit of Vietnamese flavor, and boy, that really brings it out, even though this is a Thai dish. Didn't have any peanut butter in it. This is really Japanese, so we're making the circuit of all of Asia. I'm just going to let that, maybe a little bit of this. That's kind of for later. All right. And we'll bring that up to temperature. I use a lot of chopsticks for cooking, actually. You know, my kitchen's so small that I kind of improvise things, and I don't want to scratch my cookware, so this pan has never been out of my personal cooking areas, and consequently the non-stick coating still works. Alright, that is looking great. And so I use chopsticks a lot to cook with on the non-stick and to whisk things. I don't know. Works for me. Okay. Almost ready for the veggies. And I've got my veggies all set apart. So I've been studying in Acts 14. The Lord actually woke me up. And even though I teach the Bible every day, there's not a whole lot of believers that I hang out with. I really wish it were more. We finally have church services here in the village. Somebody comes from another village. They've got a church halfway built, you know, bare concrete on the inside. And they have a blowout of a Sunday service. It's about 2 hours and 45 minutes. But as much of it as I can physically sustain, man, everybody's got a psalm or a verse or a testimony. It's really beautiful, and you know the Word says that we're supposed to have that. But the Lord woke me up the other day. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pull my main veggies out so that my julienne. See, this was part of Christian's secret that I was like, oh, is he minced half of the ginger and then the other half goes in with the veggies. So I've got some radishes in there and some carrots and stuff. We'll put that in first. And then I'm going to mix that up. Looks pretty good. Alright. So we'll go ahead and let that go. And then I'm going to put these bigger veggies on top so they just kind of steam some broccoli and such. Alright. Great. Let's let that rip. So the Spirit of the Lord woke me up and said, hey, you remember when Paul got stoned to death and then when everybody left and he got up? And I said, yeah, I remember that, Lord. But I'm sad to say it was foggy in my memory. Even though this is in the book of Acts, the book is very important to us and that we spend a good bit of time in studying. So I went and checked it out, looked it up, and it's a tremendous story. It's in Acts 14. So let's take a quick look at it. And as we are, for those of you in the first world, you may be sensing that war's on the horizon and the possibility of just dying. Well, this should be an encouragement then that the Apostle Paul was actually executed multiple times. In 2 Corinthians, he's boasting a little and he says, twice I was stoned, thrice beaten with rods, which was a horrific punishment meant to cripple. And he tells about being shipwrecked multiple times also. But this is the main time that the Bible actually details the account of when Paul was stoned to death. So let's look at it. Here, can you see my... We're getting close. And that sauce looks really good. Sometimes I try to thicken up my sauce, especially if I'm eating noodles. All right, so let's take a look at this here. Let's take a look at this. Hey, there's the chef's mom right there. It's my sister. So she's watching. Okay, so it gets pretty rowdy here in Lystra and Derbe. And it says in... you know, this is just like mentioned briefly, like, oh, and this happened. All right, here it is. Verse 19, 14th chapter, book of Acts. And there came thither certain Jews from Antioch and Iconium who persuaded the people, and having stoned Paul. So this was an execution punishment. And it's bad enough just getting beaten. And as a self-defense instructor, you know, getting put on the ground when there's a crowd around you punching and kicking is like the worst case scenario. But this was even worse because they literally clubbed him with rocks until he was good and dead. And you know, that makes a crack when it hits the skull. It's pretty obvious whether you're hurting somebody or not. So they were quite sure that Paul was dead. Let's look. 19. Having stoned Paul, drew him out of the city, supposing he had been dead. So the people that were killing him were quite convinced. And it was just like here in cartel country, they had to dump the body, right? So not only did they kill Paul, and sometimes stonings took place outside the city, sometimes they took place right there in the city. And this went, or at the door of a girl's father's house if she played the harlot there. So this is what happened, is he was stoned in the city. Then they went to dump the body. So they drug him out of town or put him on a cart or something. It says right here, drew him out of the city, supposing he had been dead. So they go to dump Paul's body. They dump his body outside of town. And then, you know, this was before the present epoch where we understand that we're supposed to gather around, thrust out the unbelievers, gather around, and pray for healing or for the raising of the dead. So it actually happens here. The believers cluster around. Now we have this account that you're actually supposed to pray as the guy gets up. 20. Howbeit, as the disciples stood round about him, he rose up. And then what does he do? He made a run for the border. He got out of the country. No, he went right back into town. A very bold move. Came into the city. He rose up and came into the city. And the next day he departed with Barnabas to Derbe. So they did eventually go on to another city. But right off the bat, he just kept on preaching in the same place. Kind of a shocker. Anyhow, we have that for our encouragement, that if you get surrounded by an angry mob, it's not necessarily the end of the world, or even the end of oneself. Let's see what we got here. I'm going to go ahead and spoon this up. Not that one. I just had my spoon. It's escaping me. It is eluding me. So we're going to try this and see if it's any good. And again, you know, this was just a short that Christian had up. And I did make it in 15 minutes. Of course, I didn't count my prep time. And once again, I'm a very slow cutter. I cut myself for the first time with my new Victorinox knife. That's kind of a rite of passage, I guess. But I have them right here. Yeah, made in Germany. This was a little bit hard to get in a developing country. And I got my little magnet up. Anyway, I cut myself the first time. Let's take a bite of this and see how it is. Looks pretty hot. Take a peek. It smells good. Let's see if I got those peppers cooked enough. If I choke here right in front of you, pray that I get back up, huh? The spice is just about right. That did get the flavor into the meat. So, let's see what exactly I did different. It's hard to say, but I just followed his instructions and it worked. And let's see if we got there's a little piece of ginger we can actually crunch. Again, an interesting technique that was new to me that worked. That half the ginger was minced, half of it was julienne. So, you know, when you get your veggies, you get a bite of that ginger. And that's another really good way to put flavor throughout the dish. So, I'm learning. Well, I think it came out okay. There's my power again. Woo. It came out okay. Christian, maybe you'll have to cook in my little red kitchen sometime. In La Casita Pelirroja. You're invited. Thanks everybody for joining me, and let's follow our instructions. We may learn a thing or two about putting a better recipe together. But let's follow our instructions from the Word and dare to believe it. Who knows what we'll accomplish? We might even live to tell the tale. God bless. Bye-bye.